Hi everybody, it's good to see you. I'm here at Artistic Artifacts today and I'm so excited because I haven't been out of the house in so long and I'm just kind of like overwhelmed by all the crafty goodness around me. So I'm glad you're here. We're going to make some ice resin pendants today, and just to start I'm going to show you some samples of things that I've done with ice resin. If you've never worked with ice resin, we're going to go over all the basics. This just gives you an idea of all the different things you can do. You can add things in, you can do clear ones with an open back, you can put pieces of costume jewelry in, you can put your own artwork in. This is just a little sketch that I did. And of course, you can do found objects and things like that. And these are some little mosaic pieces that I've been working on recently. So you can also do a traditional collage inside the pendant, which is what most people think of. But today we're going to work with a couple things. I'm going to show you how to do this pendant first. This is using the rune bezel. And I'll walk you through that. This is basically the same idea, but I used a different bezel. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how to tint ice resin. You don't always need to use it just to hold pieces down. Sometimes it can be the star of the show just itself with the different colors added in and that kind of thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is choose my bezel. These are two that we have available, and I think I'm going to go with this one this morning. And you can see in the background I have dark at the top and a lighter color at the bottom, and I was kind of thinking of night sky and earth, that kind of thing. So I'm going to use the iced enamels to get that background. And the nice thing about that is you don't have to cut paper and make it fit and make it, be really fussy about this. The iced enamels are a really easy way to get a background laid in quickly. So the iced enamels I'm going to use first are the turquoise and the pewter. And you can see that they have two different lids on them, but they've had different packaging over the years. Some of these I've had for a couple years and some of these are newer. So when you go to order it online, your packaging may look a tiny bit different. And this is what's inside. They are powders. They're somewhat like embossing powders, but they have all these yummy little pieces in them that give them texture. And when you heat them, these pieces kind of come to life. They look a lot more metallic. So you can put an adhesive down in here and then put your iced enamels in, but because we're working flat today, I'm not even going to bother with the adhesive. I'm going to get out the turquoise first, and this is a little spoon. You can use your fingers too. I like this spoon because it's a little bit pointy at the end. And I'm just going to tap some down in here and spread it around. And that is my watery, earthy part. And then for the night sky, I'll do this pewter. And add that in. It's kind of like sand painting. If you mess up a little bit, you can just pull it up. And one way to use these is to glue them down and then hit them with a heat gun. Today, because the heat gun's so noisy for filming, I'm going to put it over on this cup warmer or a candle warmer you can use. It's just a little baby hot plate. And I'm going to let it heat up, and then after it heats up, I'm going to hit it on top with the lighter just to finish melting the top. So while that's melting a little bit, I'm going to talk about the next pieces that are going in. One of the pieces is this moon face, and they come in a package of 2. Let me see what they're actually called. They're actually called hand-carved bone face from Bali. And this package had the eyes open and the eyes closed. And you can see they come like this. On my original sample the other day, I used a dark blue acrylic paint and colorized that. On this one this morning, I put some alcohol ink on it and let that soak in, and then wiped off the excess. And you can see, because this is bone, it picked up the texture of the bone in there, which I think is really nice. So I'll just quickly colorize this one with some alcohol ink, and the alcohol ink I'm using is called Sunshine Yellow, in case I want to do one that's more of a sun than a moon. And I'm going to let it sit on there for a minute. You can see it's sort of starting to soak in, and then I'm going to rub it in with a Q-tip. Now, if this got too dark or intense in color, I could also go back with a Q-tip dipped in alcohol and wipe some of it off. But I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm just going to let that sit. And you can see by my fingers, I've been playing with this for a while this morning. I'm just going to let that sit and let that dry. And the other thing I'm going to use down at the bottom are these little rocks. And here at the store, they carry the boho bits, and those are a product by Gwen LaFleur. And this one happens to be called Crystal Embers. And I think I may have mixed a little bit of green in with mine also. But these are semi-precious stones. And they come in this little container. And they make a nice natural texture in there. And you can put heavy things in your bezels, because the ICE resin is an epoxy resin, which means it serves to hold things into the bezel too. So this will be something else that I don't have to worry about gluing down. So now I'm going to go back over to my bezel, which is now hot. And pull it over here. And then I'm going to take a lighter, and I'm just going to finish this off. Now, obviously, if you have paper in your bezel already, you wouldn't want to do this. But see how quickly it melts it? I hope you can see the little pieces falling up. And the pieces that went first on the top are the silver that was in with the black. And then you'll see down here with the turquoise one that there are bits of coppery color in there. And this, under the resin, it has the look of an enamel, a glass enamel. So now my whole background is filled in. If I wanted to, I could go in and do every little piece, but I like having some of the grainy bits in there around the edges. And now I can add the rest of the pieces in. So I'll audition and see if I want, I think I want the blue face up here. So I'm going to drop that in. And you can see that this is sticking out over the top of the bezel, just like this one was. And it's okay, because the resin is going to hold that in. And when you pour the resin, you'll have a choice of either pouring it over the face like I did here and blending it in, or you can pour around the piece and it will be held in by the resin around it, but you can still have the original texture of the face showing too, if you would like. So now I'm just going to arrange some of these stones in here. Get a little more of the orangey. And then I also pulled out some of the tinier stones from this set, and I'm gonna put a few of the tiny ones around there, like that. And this one got away. I'm gonna leave that there. Now, another thing that I did on this original piece was I added some shattered opals because I wanted to have a little bit of sparkle up at the top. And the iced enamels are what I just showed you, and they're powder that melts down to a flat finish. Shattered opal is a different type of thing. It is an inclusion, something that goes into the resin, and you don't melt these, but they give a really beautiful effect. This one again is called Shattered Opal, and I'm just going to put a teeny amount of this in there to kind of be my starlight. And then because I had something sparkly on the top, I decided when I did this one that I wanted to do something a little sparkly on the bottom. So this is another inclusion, and this is glass glitter, and it's salmon. The color is salmon. And I'm going to sprinkle that in around the stones so that there's less of the blue showing through in the back. And because I did so much blue on here, I'm also going to pull it up here a little bit over that blue to cover that blue up. And then maybe add a couple more tiny stones. So this one is pretty much ready to pour, ready for resin. I'm going to set that one aside. You do want to make sure you don't tilt it or bump it at this point. See if I manage to not tilt it or bump it before I do it. Then the next thing I wanted to show you is actually, I'm going to go ahead and mix the ice resin now before I show you the next thing, because it needs about 2 minutes to sit, and I can let that sit while we're making the next pendant. Also, when you mix the ice resin, you have about 30 to 45 minutes open working time, and so you don't have to be in a rush after you pour it to immediately get it into the bezel. You've got time to work with it. So the ice resin comes in two parts. There's part A and a part B. One is the hardener and one is the resin. You want to use it in equal parts, and it doesn't matter which one you put in the cup first, but I always do the A first and then the B. And mix them together. You can see that, I guess I'll have to turn it this way. There's one that's got a bluish tint and one that's more yellowy. This one has been in the bottle for quite a while, and the longer it stays in the bottle, the more yellow it will get. Some people get worried that their resin is going to look yellow when they pour it. I used these two bottles yesterday, and this is the resin that I did yesterday, and it's fine. If you mix your A and B together and these two colors don't go away and the mixture doesn't turn clear, then you'd want to discard it, but I've never actually had a batch that I had to discard because of that. They recommend that you mix at least an ounce at a time. And that is mainly because you want to make sure that you get your ratios right, because it's very important to have it in equal amounts. And if you're mixing a smaller amount, it's harder to do. If you do want to mix a smaller amount, though, you can use the plunger pack. And this makes sure that you squeeze it out evenly. Your part A is here and your part B is here. And this does the mixing for you. So you just push down on the plunger and it pushes it out. So you could mix up a tiny amount for that. And an example of when I would want a tiny amount would be, excuse me, I did this piece yesterday and I didn't have an extra moon face, so I didn't pick that up until I got here today. So I might want to add just enough resin onto this piece to hold the moon face in there. And I wouldn't want to mix up a whole ounce because that would fill a lot. What else can I tell you about it? Oh, it is self-healing, and you can layer it. So self-healing means if I get a scratch in this, like I can scratch this up, and the next time I pour the resin, that will just fill in and you won't even be able to see it. So I'll remember to pour a little bit of resin in this today. And you can add layers even years apart if you want to. I did the background on that in a class about 2 years ago, and then about a year ago I was teaching and found those wooden rulers and decided to add them in. So I'm going to mix up my resin, the A and the B, and I always take a Sharpie and mark the marks on my cup. Can you see how I did that? It just helps me to see it better. Oops, forgot to cut the tip off. Okay, now we should have better luck.
So Nancy wants to know, how long should I wait between layers?
I would give it a full 24 hours between layers, just to let the bottom layer completely cure. So this is the part A. It's in the cup, and you could see when I poured it in there it was fairly thick. The part B is thinner, so it's going to come out faster. So just be aware that if you had to squeeze really hard to get it in the first time, you might not have to squeeze that hard the second time. I've drowned it before by going overboard. So I'm just watching to make sure I get it in equal parts. And now that the two parts are together, the chemical reaction is starting. And I'm going to put my gloves on. And I'm going to get a stir stick out, and I'm going to stir those two layers together. You need to work in a well-ventilated area, but this is very low odor. I can't smell it at all. Can you smell it?
I have my mask on.
Oh, yeah. Chris definitely can't smell it. Okay, these little stir spoons come in the kit, the 16-ounce kit. I'm going to stir it up, and you'll see what happens is it gets cloudy. And then sometimes you start to think, well, what if I did it wrong? But it's not. That's part of the chemical reaction. And in just a minute, it will get clear again. You can see it starting to clear up already. So I'm just going to keep stirring. I'm going to try not to stir too many air bubbles in here. The nice thing about this resin is the bubbles will come up to the surface and you can get rid of them. Some resins suggest that you put a lighter over top of it to get rid of the bubbles. You do not need to do that with this. And I even pour it sometimes before all the bubbles are out, and they work their way out. If you've got a really stubborn bubble in there, you can pop it with a pin when it's sitting in the bezel. And sometimes I don't mind them, as long as it's not in an awkward place, like right over the eye or something like that.
So what is the open time on this resin?
The open time on this resin is about 45 minutes. And at 45 minutes, it will start to get really sticky and hard to work with. And it's still, though, a little bit pliable for quite some time. And I had made my own polymer clay face and put it in there last night, and I just didn't like it. These are so much prettier. And so about 3 hours after I poured the resin, I went back and took some pliers and plucked it out and put in. This morning I replaced it with this one. So I still had time to do that, and you can see that it flowed back nicely where that hole was, and you can't even see where it was. So I'm going to sit this off to the side, and I'm going to prepare another bezel. This one I'm going to use some texturized copper. It's a thin copper sheet, and these are not normally available in the store, but we have packets made up, a limited number of packets. They have 4 different pieces of metal in them, and if you order $50 worth of product that's in stock, you'll get one of these packets with your order, a free packet with your order. And I believe at $50 you also are hitting free shipping. Is that right?
With the shipping code.
With the shipping code, okay.
And who made these copper plates?
Nancy Onihiro made these copper plates, and she is wonderful. So that is her gift to you. I cut up one of these pieces of copper plate and put some alcohol ink on there and cut it to fit this bezel. So I'm going to put that down in, and I'm going to put some colorized resin over that because the copper is going to reflect that really nicely. And then I have this bezel also that I'm going to fill, and I wanted to show you how you can fit something to your bezel. Let me turn it this way. This is paper that I cut to potentially use as a background. And the way I got the dimensions for that paper was I just took a regular sheet of paper. You could also use tin foil, and pressed it down on top. And hopefully you can see the creases made that print. And then I'll just go in and cut that out. It's a little bit of an involved process, but there are some new bezels that have come out that have a template now that you can just lay the template over your piece of paper and cut with that, or cut it out with that, and it makes life so much easier. So I'll show you those bezels at the end too. So now I can fit this, work on this rough piece of paper until I get it just the size I want, and then I can use it to cut the good paper. And also, because the way I cut this, let me show you. Oh, that's not what I thought it was. If I wanted to use, for example, this dictionary paper, you can also use this for a viewfinder to decide where you want to cut it. So I could decide if I wanted the white area showing there to be running right down the middle, or if I wanted it off to the side, or if I wanted it, to do it almost like a coat of arms and have it running that way. I'd be able to see what I was doing and then trace it and then cut it out. So I'm going to drop this in here.
Can you use any ink or just alcohol ink?
You can use almost, well, for tinting the resin or for tinting the metal.
For tinting the metal.
For tinting the metal, you can use other ink, and in fact, you can even use a Sharpie. I could color it over like this with a Sharpie, and then if I had a piece of sandpaper, I could go back and rub off the high spots, and that would give me a really nice texture too. It would show the highs and lows in the metal. So I'll see if this alcohol ink cleaner does it. But yeah, you can use any ink. You can use acrylic paint. And when I use acrylic paint on it, I like to get the metal hot first. That didn't work so well, but well, there you go. You can see the idea. You can play back and forth. But if I sanded it, these areas would pop up. So for this piece, I'm going to, I'm going to just put the metal in there by itself because I'm going to use the tinted resin, and I want this to reflect up to make it brighter inside there. Other things I could put in there are foil, and ICE Resin has these nice packets of foil that you can put in. They make a nice background themselves too, but I also like to put them to reflect the color back up with that. So I'm going to use this as my template because I know it fits already. And these are just ordinary scissors. You don't need to have any special shears or equipment or anything to cut the metal. It is sharp, so you have to be careful about that. Let's see how we did. I'm just going to pop that down in. When you're fitting something into your bezel, it's better to go a little bit over and up the sides than to go short. And the reason is that the resin kind of magnifies everything. And if you have it set in too far and it's a little bit short in there, you're going to be able to see the base of the bezel and it'll be more noticeable. So now I'm going to go back to my resin. And you can see there's some little bubbles on there, but I'm not going to worry about those. And I'm going to go ahead and fill this bezel. And I find this part really relaxing. It might be really boring for you all to watch me do right now, but when I'm at home by myself and I have a bunch of pieces to do, I just really kind of get into just slowly pouring it and watching it flow and everything. And you can see it's pretty thick. It's probably the consistency of pancake syrup right now. And the drier it gets, the thicker it will get. But it's thick enough that if you have a flat piece of metal like this, you can coat the metal, or in this case, I just put some tinted resin inside of a washer, a copper washer, and it stayed. It didn't flow out. And there's a lot of surface tension, so it will dome up a little bit for you too. It won't rise up out of the bezel, but it will sit a little higher than the bezel. And I'm going to add just a little more down here at the tip. Actually, I'm going to wait and see if it flows down to the tip. And I'm going to add some resin to this one. And you can see where I scratched there. It's just going to completely disappear. Another thing I added into this bezel that I didn't put into the one today was some dried flowers that I had. And I believe they came from a nail supply place that they were to put on fingernails. That's a good place to look for tiny objects, as beauty supply places. So that'll be my second layer on that. And then I want to do something along the lines of this one in this bezel. So I'm going to, actually in this bezel, so I'm going to tint this resin, some of it. I'm trying to find a little cup. Here it is. So I'm just going to pour some of it out into another container, and I'm going to use the ICE Resin tints. They come in a whole bunch of colors. Today I have rose quartz and amethyst, and this was the amethyst that I did here, so I think I'll do mostly rose quartz in this one. And I'm just going to drop a drop in. This is highly pigmented like food coloring is, so you don't need a lot. And you can see how pretty that is just flowing in there. Sometimes I'll just drop a drop directly into the piece and just let it flow out like that. But today, for this one, I'm going to stir it up. And go ahead and pour it in here. And tipping it to get it to go down to the bottom. And then I think I'm gonna do some purple at the top. So again, I just poured a drop or two in there. The purple's darker to start with, so it makes it really dark. If it was too dark, I could add clear resin back into it, thin it out. So I'm going to add that and just kind of let it do what it wants to do. And you can see how the texture of that metal is coming through now too. And actually I really like the texture of the metal, so I think I'm only going to add the shattered opals on the bottom. And this is the same thing that I put in the other piece. If you have wet pieces that are drying, you do want to be careful with things like the shattered opal that they don't fly over and land in your other pieces. I'm going to put a lot. Okay. So that is the shattered opal down in the bottom. And because the resin is also an epoxy, I have this big dragonfly, and I can just lay the dragonfly across, top off that resin. I'm going to also cut this little loop off, and fill that up, and it will stay on there just like this one too. So, how are we doing for time?
We're at 10 o'clock.
Oh.
The door's opening up.
Okay. All righty.
So you can keep on going.
I think we're good. This piece, I'm just going to put some resin in and put this little bunny going across. Oh, and one more thing I'll show you is resin paper. If you have leftover resin when you're done, you can take any kind of paper and pour the resin over top. And I like to use this little squeegee to run that over it. And it will soak into your paper. It will make your paper clear, translucent, and it will also be a little bit flexible. And you can use this for a variety of things. So you can see here, this is the paper that was not coated. This is the paper that was coated. If you bend it really hard, it would break, but for the most part, it's pretty solid, and you can cut that out and make jewelry out of it. You can add it to art quilts, any kind of projects like that, ATCs, that sort of thing. So that's a fun thing to do with your leftover resin.
What do you dry the paper on?
I dry the paper on some sort of silicone mat. This is the one that ICE Resin has. It's great. It's a non-stick studio sheet. It's heat resistant, so you can use your heat gun right on top of it. And if I use alcohol inks on this, they're gonna kind of soak in, but this one, it won't get damaged. So, and real quickly, let me show you these bezels. You can see that the resin sticks really far out of these, and that is because these pieces were poured separately and dropped in, and they come with these special molds. So you can mix your resin, pour it in there and let it harden, and then when it's hard, you can pop it out of the mold just like an ice cube out of a tray, and pop it into this and just add a little more ice resin at the bottom to hold it in, and you've got some nice big 3D pieces. So if you have any questions, you can get in touch with me through the store. I'm happy to answer any questions. And on Facebook, I'm at Brier Design Studio.
All right, thank you, Leslie. Thank you for everyone who watched today. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram. We'll post this on YouTube in a couple days, so it'll also be archived there. And is there any last questions for Leslie? Do you sell your work?
I do, yes. I'm going to be selling it at the market that we have coming up here. And if there's anything that you're interested in the meantime, you can message me on Facebook.
And someone commented that it looks like this could become addictive.
It is absolutely addictive. I brought in this little tray of samples, and I pulled those samples out of almost a shoebox full of things that I have. Yeah, at one point my family said, if you say you're going to put one more thing in resin, we're going to scream. I use natural things. I use, little bits and bobs of things. Just anything that will hold still, you can put in resin. So, yes, it's addictive.
You're getting lots of good comments. Thank you, lovely. Really excellent.
Aww,
thank you.
Thank you, guys. I miss everybody so much. I can't wait till we can all be together and play together.
And now you can go shopping.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.